All right, so I'm with Travis Warlock. Last time that we physically saw each other was in Uruzgan Valley of Afghanistan 16 years ago. He was the ground force commander in what ended up to be a pretty hellacious, terrible few days, a gunfight that was 3 days long to get to a place, to then get another gunfight to get out of that place.
Pretty much.
Danger close fire missions, Spectre gunships being like, bro, we might run out of ammo. And
All day, man.
yeah, one, thank God we're alive.
Amen.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And we're at ATAC, but he has an amazing facility, and I want to dive into methodology, values, background. So take me all the way back to when did you want to know that you want to come into the military?
Right, so 1991, I was a sophomore in college and had just had it. And Desert Storm was now at that time Desert Shield. And I thought to myself, man, the epitome of what a man should be is to, what is war like?
Yeah.
And I was looking at the people to my left and my right in classrooms, and I'm like, I'm done with this. I'm going straight down to the Army recruiter, and I'm gonna volunteer to be infantry, and I wanna get into the mix of this thing. And sure enough, unfortunately, Desert Shield broke out in sometime January 15th, 16th, and it was a 100-hour war, and there I was in basic training thinking, oh my gosh, I went in with an Airborne Ranger contract, but I forgot to read the small print at the bottom that says that the needs of the Army.
Yeah.
So when they thought it was going to be this long, drawn-out, mechanized infantry war, it was ominous dominus, you're now 11 Mike.
Wow.
And I thought, what in the world? This is hell on earth, literally. I didn't sign up. I mean, God bless the guys that do that. They are amazing soldiers. It just wasn't in my forte. I didn't want to do that. I always had this mindset of what is it like to be a U.S. Army Ranger.
That's a unique person, and I'm not disparaging any form of service because all of it is significant. But there's a unique person that Pearl Harbor happens, and there's a line of people to enlist.
That's right.
You know, we start hearing rumblings about trains driving into Poland full of people and not coming out with people. And they're talking about the largest invasion across a channel, and boys are signing up. I mean, you're one of those people.
Well, we both were, right?
Yeah.
In a sense, we were both young men when we signed up, and there was a war going on, and we stepped up to the plate and volunteered.
Yeah. So you're going as 11 Bravo with the airborne contract, end up as 11 Mike.
Right.
And what's the journey of before you end up in special operations? Like, where did you first hear about special forces?
Right.
What did that look like?
So I've been introduced to the mechanized infantry, which was a Bradley fighting vehicle, essentially a tank that can hold a squad in the back of it. And synonymous with mechanized infantry is motor pools. And motor pools is just something I wasn't into. I was wanting to get into the rucksack on my back. I wanted to live nasty out in the open. And motor pools just wasn't in what my desires were. So upon coming to my first duty station at Fort Stewart, Georgia, I thought to myself, with the Army promised me Airborne Ranger contract and they made me this, but the war isn't going on anymore. So why can't the 1st Ranger Battalion's right up here at Savannah, Georgia from Hinesville, why can't I just go back up there? And they're like, you're locked in. So I thought to myself, you know, no one asked me if I was claustrophobic. So now I'm claustrophobic. And I can't get into a Bradley fighting vehicle.
Give me other options.
Right, give me other options. And they did. They sent me to Korea and put me in a Bradley fighting vehicle, which I said, you know, I'm claustrophobic here too, as well as in the States. So, okay, you're going to be the unit armorer. And I fought like hell over there during the night when it was daytime in the United States to put together a Ranger School packet. And so I did that, and I had my company commander, who just came from the Ranger Battalion, sign off on it and said at that time you didn't have to go to a pre-Ranger. If you got orders, you could go.
Wow.
So I worked all night to get my medical done. Thank goodness I had a company commander that just came out of Ranger Battalion. He said, man, I can hook you up, Travis. He goes, I want to see if you're fit for it first. He ran me to death, had to memorize the Ranger Creed, and he goes, all right, I'm going to do it. Here we are up on the DMZ doing EIB training, which is Expert Infantry Badge, right? And he comes up to me, he goes, Travis, I got some news for you, good and bad. He goes, I can't believe it happened, but you got orders to leave Korea and go straight to Ranger School at Fort Benning.
Whoa.
And he goes, the bad news is you got to be there in 7 days. So what I'm going to do is try to push you to the next class unless you think you want to try and make it. I'm like, I want to try and make it.
Yeah.
So he goes, sign all your TA-50 over to your platoon sergeant, and we're going to get you back down to Seoul and get you on a plane. So I went from South Korea to Fort Benning. Took me about 3 days to get there.
What year is this?
93. So it was started in August of 93, and it was, here I had left Korea, and I'm starting to do push-ups in Fort Benning with the Ranger instructors. As everybody else is cringing, I'm just going, thank God I'm back in the United States. Yeah. Beautiful, I made it, and I'm just, it's unbelievable. And get a chance to go through Ranger School. And of course my orders were back to Fort Stewart, mechanized infantry, but coming there with a Ranger tab now, you got a little bit different in your toolkit. So I go to the 124th MI Battalion, which hosted the Long Range Surveillance Detachment. And sure enough, they were just eager to have 11 Bravos straight out of Ranger School. And so that Sergeant Major, with a case of beer under his desk, made a call to the Sergeant Major I was going to and did a little swap. I'm in the Long Range Surveillance Detachment for about 2 years. It deactivated, and everybody started going to this thing called Special Forces Assessment and Selection. And I thought, I'm not going back to the line units for mechanized infantry. God bless them, but it just wasn't my thing. So I tried out for SFAS in 94 or 95 and made it, and immediately went to Bragg and started as going through as an 18 Echo.
Whoa.
So when we were in
95.
95, right. And I'm sure you remember that test when you go through SFAS, they put the earphone, did they do that at the time?
They did, yep.
And you got to figure out, is that an I, an E, or a T as you're listening to the dots? And at that time, I didn't care, so I just filled them all out, stupidly. Yeah. So guess who became the 18 Echo? And we started pounding out Morse code and SUTs and yada yada. There we go at the end of it, and I get assigned to 3rd Group, and that was my intro into Special Forces.
So you when 9/11 happens,
yes,
where are you?
I'm a 2nd lieutenant in the 112th Special Operations Signal Battalion.
Okay, so you had stayed SF as an enlisted guy for 4 or 5 years.
Yes.
Go to OTC.
OTC.
Or Officer Candidate School.
Right.
OCS.
OCS.
And then that's a separate school.
Right.
And then you're back at what unit when 9/11 happens?
The USASOC has a signal battalion, Special Operations Signal Battalion. So as when you submit for Officer Candidate School, they try to align you with your
career path, branch.
Yeah, pretty much. So I was came out of as an 18 Echo, so it only made sense to go into communications, and they give you a top 3, and infantry was not one of them. Yeah. So they and I had a little help because I had gone through OTC and been over in CAG, and those people can just pick up the phone call wherever you want to go. And here comes my OCS date, kind of like Ranger School. It's like I got accepted to it, and it was supposed to start in a week, and they're like, well, you can wait for the next class. I'm like, man, I really want to get in this one. So they picked up the phone, put me in that class, and that's where I met Ashley. And after that, they worked my first duty station or assignment as a lieutenant, as a communications officer with the Special Operations Signal Battalion there on Bragg. So I stayed in the community. They kind of took care of me, and here comes OEF2, I think. Jump over to Bagram is the first. They just moved from K2 into Afghanistan, the siege of Sodif. So we got MiG engines laying all over the place. It's just a junkyard of Soviet scrap. It's unbelievable in 02. And from there, I did my time. First lieutenant, put my packet back in to go back through Special Forces as an officer, and was picked up. And a lot of the cadre we had going through the course at the time were some of my old teammates, so it was kind of like, hey, you're good.
Yeah. And this is where I meet you.
Absolutely.
So you've been in for 10 years now.
Probably closer to 15 by that time, by '08, yeah. 91 to 201 to '08. Yeah, maybe longer than that even.
Man. Conventional side on the infantry, to special operations side as the enlisted side, to then going over the fence, working in with the unit,
Yeah.
coming back as an officer,
Right.
to not conventional but special operations, not as a support guy, and
Right.
then going to back to special operations, special forces specifically,
Right.
as an officer.
Yes.
And so I bump into you at language school,
Sure did.
and
yeah.
we are taking an accelerated. How did you end up in that accelerated language? Because we only had, I think it was 5 or 6 weeks of language school before our DLAB test to test out.
I don't remember. When I first got there, I tried to manipulate the system with the first sergeant of language school.
Yeah.
He was an old teammate, and I wanted to go back to third group. So third group was Portuguese, French. They had an opening in French, so they just kind of snuck me in there. But as officers are already slated to what group you're going to. So I guess someone was doing a check and balance, and all of a sudden they found an officer that's supposed to go to 7th group is now taking French, which isn't spoken in Central or South America, and they pulled me out and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "That must have been a clerical mistake. Can I just keep going?" They're like, "No, now you're going to be in Spanish."
Okay.
That must have been it.
Yeah, that checks out. So we have a very shortened language school.
Right.
And it was pretty rad. So I'm an E4. I had been in the Army at that point for a year.
Okay.
From infantry school to airborne school to SOPC to selection to SOPC 2 to SUT.
Oh my gosh, man.
And then you were one of the first non-18 X-rays, because I went to an all 18 X-ray selection.
Okay.
And so SOPC was all 18 X-rays.
Right.
And then selection was all 18 X-rays. Then SOPC 2 was all 18 X-rays.
Right.
So phase 2, small unit tactics, was the first time that I saw like regular Army people.
Right.
I had never, think about this, almost to
Wow.
a year, I had not spent any time
Never thought about it that
with
way.
anybody that had ever been in the Army.
Holy smokes, man.
It was just a bunch of like E4 mafia kids that are trying to like cheat their way through everything.
And if y'all don't understand this program that he went through, from basically walking off the street to a recruiter's office as an 18 X-ray, the task was much harder than anybody else that had. I mean, it was just, they wanted to make sure that these guys were ready to go in just a few months from being a liability in the training to an asset.
Yeah, I don't know if that ever happened.
Well, proof positive it did, right? It was absolutely amazing.
That's still up for argument.
The curriculum they had to go through, the physical, it was just unreal.
Crazy tritters. But then I walk into the language school, and we immediately get this top cover, which is you. Everything got really easy for the next couple of months, which was pretty rad. And then where do you go after language school?
Right.
You go to 7th group to 1st Battalion?
1st Battalion, sure did. And took a team that was going to be doing a intel mission, and we were out in Western Afghanistan. We didn't have anything to do with what was going on in Afghanistan. We did a split team concept. We were out in a place called Farah, and the other half of the team was in Herat. And we were basically orienting our efforts toward a different country. And I can probably just leave it at that. And it was all civilian clothes. We were under the cover of being contractors. It was just, we had civilian vehicles, blue jeans, everything. It was just unbelievable. We could call in for...
This is in 06.
This would have been 06 or 07. Sure would have been, yeah.
And again, I'm not praising one group over another, but peak war from that 05 to 09.
Right, yeah, it sure was.
The war has lots of, like we had the surge, we had the drawdown, we had pushes on the Iraq side and the Afghanistan side, like pretty epic named battles like Fallujah and Ramadi and Sadr City.
Yeah.
But this era of the 05, 06, 07, 08, 09.
Right.
Like, this is peak war.
It is.
This is, it's indescribable it's the wild, wild west.
Truly, truly was. I mean, there was no holds barred. It was allowing ODAs to operate independently, and if they needed close air support, there was no question it was coming.
Yeah.
They needed, aerial resupplies. There was no question. Just effort was just dumped out there to them wherever they wanted it. There was no resource beyond their request, literally.
Yeah.
And our battalion commanders and group commanders running the Siege of Soda were just pushing everything we needed to us. And it was about that time we met up in the, going through that crazy time, and what was that, 08, going to
That's
your
right.
head?
Yeah.
And I think at that time, so there was a surge being pushed to Iraq, which took all of our air. Typically, Anaconda, this one fire base, would be resupplied for the winter. They're way up in the mountains, 10, 12,000 feet, and the roads would become impassable. Almost ridiculous to even think about doing a ground resupply of that magnitude. So things would be dropped in periodically as they built up for the winter. All air assets were moved or pushed for Iraq, so we had to do a ridiculous ground convoy of winterization.
Yep. Winterization and personnel resupply.
And personnel
So we were
resupply.
bringing
sure
in
did.
the Czech Special Operations.
That's right, and that's where you were at.
Yep.
Absolutely.
That weird deployment for me. What ended up being an 8-month. I was never on an ODA for that 8-month, like the one that I went with you.
Sure.
I was being handed off from Czech Special Operations to French to Australian, and whenever they had a TST or they had a big, not named operation, but like a big movement of any form,
Sure.
they'd be like, okay, well we'll throw this thing in here that would be connectivity. So my whole entire 8-month was hopping from one Allied SOF to the next Allied SOF, which was really weird because I mean I knew, like, on your team I had 4 friends on your team, Mike Goebel, who passed in 2019, one hell of a human.
Awesome individual.
2 other Mikes that were on there were also friends, went through selection with one of them. He went on to do incredible things.
Yeah, he did.
But it was like that. I would know a few guys on the team, but you'd have to like immediately build rapport. But I'm there with the NATO partner. So it was always these weird things. I want to pause brief of career and kind of talk about phases. I thought when I went into this valley that I was a badass. I thought I'd already gone to Iraq. I was in the CRIF, been to Sephardic, I've been to SIFSIC, like I know all these things, and I thought I knew all these things.
You knew a lot. Amazing training you received.
But now looking back, like regret and shame, I think, are things that I carry a lot.
Don't we all?
Yeah.
Any human being who doesn't is a liar.
Yeah.
Truly, truly.
And also understanding of you were dealing with things in your seat that I couldn't truly comprehend at that time of my career.
Yeah, sure.
So
sure.
I even like disparaged. I talk shit about you. And when you were doing the one thing that probably kept us all alive, your job. You were being the commander. You're on a radio. You were calling in, coordinating with our JTAC.
Yeah.
And I'm outside being like, banging my chest like an ape, thinking I'm the warfighter. And this is one of the as I look back now, I'll be at 20 years this coming January.
Wow.
In uniform. And I'm still like, every time I think back, I'm just like, what an idiot.
Don't be too hard on yourself. We're designed, we were bred to be that way. Our psychology was that we couldn't die. We were invincible.
Yeah.
That's what we had to have to do the job. We couldn't worry about being wounded or being killed, or at least we had to make peace with our maker if that happened and put it in the, into a blind spot where it disappeared. So this was the environment of high testosterone These were highly masculated men, not effeminate at all. So when you get into the locker room environment, you know, it's the banging up against each other.
Yeah.
It takes steel to sharpen steel, right?
Yeah.
It's what made us who we are. It's what gave us the thick skin. It's what allowed us to project over what we would want to do in some awful situations.
Yeah.
And Tim,
You saved our lives.
there's not, you know, I would be a hypocrite if I didn't say that even my battalion commander at that got under my skin so bad that if he could have heard the things I was saying when I released the hand mic,
Yeah.
it would have been along the same lines. And it's okay. We have a lot of adrenaline pumping, and it does affect our thought process as we are in survival mode.
Yeah.
It's not normal psychology over there.
Psychology, another wild, in that same mission, I carried, do you remember when we were getting shot at as we're coming into Firebase Anaconda? We'd already linked up with the ODA that had come out to meet us.
Right.
And there were a few houses that were receiving accurate fire from.
Sure.
And we went and assaulted this house.
Yes.
And this is psychology. Mike Goebel and I go to a door, and machine gun fire goes through this door.
Right.
Mike Goebel, I don't know how he knew this. He pushes me and he saves my life.
Wow.
If I'd been standing in front of the door, just like you just taught me a few minutes in there,
Yeah.
I'd be a dead guy on the other side of the door. And I swear I could see a machine gun sticking out of a window, and I
Sure.
throw a grenade in there.
Right.
And a whole bunch of women and kids had been barricaded inside of that place by
That's
the
right.
bad guys because they're evil.
Yeah.
They're soulless assholes.
Right. Absolutely.
And I thought for forever that everybody that got hurt in there,
Yeah.
I hurt.
No, Tim, I remember that time as, remember I took the RG up and knocked the gate down.
Yeah, you rammed through an
Rammed through the
entire
gate.
like reinforced gate, and I think Mike K is in a spot raining down hell from.
That's right. And I was seeing it. You can't hear what's going on inside these armored vehicles. The diesel churning is just, there's no way. So I remember looking out at Dan O'Carlton.
Yeah.
He's out there. I look through the window and I'm like, we good? I'm behind bulletproof glass. He's like, yeah, come on out. So I jump out real quick and join the guys, the team that's on the stack there, really on this wall would just push down. And there you are, Tim, you're sitting there. And you're like, man, I know I saw a gun coming out of that window. Should I throw a grenade? I was like, hell yeah, man.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a good throw. That is, hey, if I had one on me, I'd do it too.
Yeah.
But your idea, you came up with it, and it was the sweetest throw of a grenade I've ever seen in my life. I was looking over your shoulder. It was just across the courtyard and right down through a window. And then, of course, we stood back behind the wall. Poof. Now, we didn't go in there and clear it because whatever was in there, whether it was still alive, who cares?
Yeah.
But yeah, we had some, civilians on the battlefield that came out.
Who was that giant of an 18 Delta you had?
Adam.
Man.
Adam K.
Was he just like direct descendants of the Vikings?
He was a big dude, man. He was a good medic too.
Yeah, he was.
Both the medics on the teams were amazing. Daniel was one of them, and Adam was the other. Just so proficient. 18 Deltas, just unreal. And yeah, they jumped right to it. So did Daniel B. He came out of the crow's nest, the vehicle we rammed the gate with, and it was a tearjerker, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
What we saw coming out with a young child in her arms. And I remember when we saw that couple come out, the family, that child was held in her arms. I did the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life. And I saw it, and I let my emotions take over. And I remember just stepping over the wall and going out there, that courtyard that wasn't clear.
No.
And grabbed that baby out of her arms. I was stupid. I mean, I could have been lit up, and now it could have been, a guy, an American laying there wounded, creating more possible chaos for the team to try to clear and come get me. Yeah. It was a bad decision, horrible decision, but it was one that I didn't have my emotions in check either. I should have just let them walk on out.
As wild as We still have to fight to Firebase Anaconda.
Yeah.
We had a few days to like refit, re-equip,
Right.
and then we had to drive back.
Drive back, right.
Where they, for however, I think we were in Anaconda for a week.
Just about, yeah, unloading. Sure was.
The insurgents and foreign fighters and Taliban are setting up there's only 2 ways out.
Right.
And they're just sitting there setting up. Again, a young man that didn't understand or appreciate, you are laying on multiple layers of close air support to include A-10s, helicopters, and Spectre for our drive out. This is such like a captain, ground force commander versus I'm sitting there putting grenades into a backpack, thinking that I'm like doing the baddest thing, and I'm like loading, 40, 50 extra magazines from my speed magazines.
Which was exactly what you should have been doing. To a T. That fulfilled the responsibility perfectly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We leave, immediately get in it, and danger close fire missions from A-10s that save our life and get us out of there.
Truly. Unbelievable.
And so then from 2008, I kind of lose touch.
Yeah.
You have 8 more years in your career before you retire.
That's right.
What are these last, the last era of your career?
So it was, I got a chance to, after I came off the second ODA, the battalion commander put me as a XO for a company, just trying to groom me to go up that way. And when the HHC commander for USASOC opened up, and at this time I had been doing what they call vignettes, which teams would come out if they had a pretty, entertaining mission set, like we did the convoy. USASOC would call us up to brief these vignettes to congressional delegates, foreign military officers, and they were just really trying to show off a capability. And so I was up there presenting the vignette over and over again for dignitaries and VIPs coming to USASOC, and I suppose Mulholland heard my name, and he sat in on one of them, and you can't read the man.
Yeah.
But I guess he liked what he heard.
Tough cat.
I was coming out of getting ready to go somewhere as my year up for a XO of a company came up, and he called me up to be the HHC commander for him of USASOC, USAFIC, and at the time our SOAC, which was the Rotary Wing command. And here I am, this little company commander that's really just administrational only at this time, but it was unique because I had a 3-star general, Mulholland, 2-star general over USAFIC, and a 1-star general over our SOAC, and at any given time, I could make him piss in a cup. Not that I did, but it was kind of interesting being the captain, just about making major, and you're signing the leave form of 3-star, 2-star, 1-star generals, and Sergeant Major Bear, you may remember him.
Yeah, I do.
And it was just unique, kind of being in the limelight of the epitome of the structure of the command, and just got to see USASOC from the perspective of a 3-star general, and what he went through, and his staff meetings, and it was unique. After that, I decided that after being through the Q course twice as enlisted an officer, I knew my time was coming to an end. I was ready to get out. Ashley's time was approaching. And I thought, man, I want to go back to SWCC. And so when you're up there at HHC USASOC, they were telling me you can go back to 7th Group, you can go wherever you want. We got the big gorilla up here that's going to make it happen. And I was like, I'd like to command the Q course. So they're like, all right, the slot's opening up, it's yours. Well, we had a little bit of time, so he said, why don't you take time and go through a master's in NDU. So did a master's in strategic security studies, waited for the window to open up, and went and commanded the Q course. Got to see it from the top down.
So cool.
And it was amazing to see all that happen, and to see the logistical requirements and the student requirements. And that kind of started teetering off as I wanted to stay in SWCC after that, and then went over to the 18 Delta program and became their S3 and retired out of that.
Man.
So it kind of, 7th Group at that time had moved to Eglin, And Ashley's in psychological operations at Bragg. They're wanting a position down there, so I'm like, I'm just going to stay here. The family, kids are getting older. We're wore out from, back and forth to Afghanistan for the past decade. And had a great time as the S3, which is a really nothing position for the 18 Delta program. It was cool. It was cool.
So now here we're in Tennessee.
Right.
Like leaves are changing. It's couldn't wish for better weather. It's
Right.
just
Oh,
gorgeous. We just got done going through scenario-based training, shoot houses, 360 ranges, going through. So where did the idea of ATAC come from, and what is the mission?
So we retired out of the military. I thought for sure that I wanted to sit on a couch in a bathrobe with bath slippers and a couch full of potato chips and a remote control with extra batteries when it ran out. And I wasn't moving for 6 months. I couldn't do it. About 3 weeks later, I was losing my mind, and I had to do something. And we had neighbors coming up asking us this and that. What do you think about using a gun? And slowly, Ashley and I said, you know what? Let's do it. Let's just invest in a little company, to kind of really to keep me occupied, give us something to do. And I said, let's just do it completely different. Let's break the mold. Our kids had 22 rifles, 22 pistols, shooting steel plates, just so much fun. I'm like, let's use the 22 as a trainer. Let's not put the emphasis on having to manage weight and recoil and teach the tactics and the techniques and not worry about just the gun going off and creating overpressure and recoil, and add a suppressor to it, and let's take off the hearing protection. Now it's getting even funner, right? We're looking at having a good time. I wanted to take the out of firearms training and to make it something that the American public could utilize, have a good time at, and learn something. So as we started, we'd never been to civilian firearms training. As we began looking across the industry, Ashley broke it down looking at the psychology of the curriculum, and I began looking at physical infrastructures of the ranges, and we weren't trying to compete with the firearms training industry. We were looking for shortcomings, gaps, and voids that maybe we could fill to make the industry itself better. And once we started looking out there, watching videos as to what it was, we became really concerned that we saw civilians being trained like military and police, standing upright and motionless, shooting an eye-level piece of paper at a given distance. And we thought, man, that's really not what I'd want to do. If my wife's in a bad situation, I don't want her making herself the perfect target for someone to shoot. I want her to move to get out of there. Use the gun to break contact, not to engage. And so we started looking at this, and we started looking at the structure of the firearms industry and what's being taught. And we started challenging everything they were saying as we started seeing that it was built on the backbone of capitalism, which is good. We're capitalist. But anytime there is money and branding involved, buyer beware. Nothing wrong with the individual selling you anything. You're buying it freely. But we have to just put a huge filter in front of that and just ask why. Why am I standing upright and motionless and not moving? Sometimes, mostly, it's the restriction of the range, and the firearms instructor is just limited to what they have to do, they have to work with. So we built a 360 range and thought, let's start teaching people how to move the gun in a certain way, using a 22 caliber, light recoil, suppressed. Let's add the laser into it at close range to take the perishable skill of shooting out of the equation. Who wants a perishable skill in a gunfight, right? Let the laser do the walking and talking, right? You can see where the bullet's going to land before you pull the trigger. It's hand and eye coordination, nothing more. And everybody's an immediate expert once they use a laser at close range, right? And add that with a light recoil firearm, and they're deadly immediately. We started emphasizing those practices and procedures, kind of blending what we learned in the military in room clearing, just with a twist, because typically it's going to be single person entry, and who does that in the military? Or law enforcement, really?
Very rarely.
It's not. It's actually considered counterintuitive. But could the American homeowner be in that situation?
All the time.
With a loved one in a house saying, Dad, Mom, somebody's in the house, I think they have a gun, and no offense on law enforcement, but when you look at your watch and go, Am I going to wait for 911? And is the individual, God bless them, that's going to come out, did they just graduate high school and finish the basic law enforcement officer academy? I don't want to leave that situation, no offense to them, in that condition. This is my loved one. I care more about them than they do or ever will, and it's understandable. So we just present an option for the American homeowner in a bad situation, in an active shooter situation, how to use the gun to get away.
Man, it's
That
awesome.
was kind of the nexus for ATAC.
Yep. So that's the genesis. So we're at ATEC right now. We have shoot house, dry fire shoot house, another shoot house. We have linear targets like bus. We have shooting in and around vehicles, under vehicles. Who can come and train with you?
Anybody. Actually, we like the less experienced or the person with a greater handicap is who we're looking for.
Yeah.
People come out, there's two types of people that shoot. There are those who have amazing capabilities and those who have just deafening limitations. And we're looking for the people over here. We kind of think they're forgotten about. And so if you have rheumatoid arthritis, your injury or illness, you're missing a finger,
You got them.
you got them. We're gonna work with you and your limitation to help you achieve success in the nightmare of an armed engagement.
Church security, school teachers.
Absolutely.
Mothers and fathers that are just wanting to be better protectors of their families.
Absolutely. We do church security training. We've brought a lot of church security teams out here, and we try to offer them the paradigm. I'll usually ask them to bring their firearms out, lay out whatever you're using to defend your church with. I've seen everything from 44 Magnums to snub-nosed 38s. And we present this question to them, is like on the perfect day, the perfect environment, the perfect target, perfect distance, perfect gun, when we warm up, we go bang, 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 whoops, and we all throw shots warming up from a cold shoot. And we apply that perfect situation of a missed shot to how much likely are you to miss a shot in an active shooter in a congregation, people running everywhere, where you have an adrenaline dump and you've got this hand cannon.
Yeah.
And so if you miss your target and happen to hit an innocent bystander in your congregation like a child, what do you want to be hitting them with? A heavy jacketed hollow point or a little round nose 22? And this is where we took the 22 from a training caliber into a legitimate caliber and how it can possibly work for you. Because as recoil goes up, accuracy goes down under dynamic situations. Yeah. And we start advising or recommending to church security teams, buy a target pistol and run national match ammo through it. And you can train on a dime store budget, which gets you shooting, and the more you do anything, the better you do it.
Yeah, that's the truth. So for people that want to come and train with you, where can they find out information? Where can they book training opportunities? Where is the funnel for how do I go to ATAC?
So it's tacticalcourse.com, tacticalcourse.com. We like to talk to our guests, so just give us a call personally, and we change the calendar depending on what you want to do. If you want to shoot home, we have home defense as our entry-level program because we teach the one-handed use of the firearm. We introduce
super fun.
Right.
Yeah.
We introduce
I had a
you
ton
to the
of fun.
laser.
Like, I shoot a lot, and I was all smiles the whole entire morning.
And that's it right there. We have what we call the C4 of our adult learning program, which is first to make you comfortable. And if you're comfortable, you can comprehend a whole lot more than if you're under anxiety trying to learn. And once you're comfortable, we believe that you're going to be more apt and more quickly to build confidence in what we're showing you. And the natural byproduct of confidence is capability. And you'll typically leave here having a new understanding for fundamentals in a light recoil firearm augmented with a laser in close quarters. It's just unbelievable.
All right, I'll put all the information down below in the description with the website and email and phone number. Man, I'm sorry it was 16 years.
Yeah, man, no doubt.
You're an amazing American.
Thank you, brother. You are too, man.
I try. An imperfect one.
We all are.
Glad you chewed me out when I got to hop on the phone with you after not talking for a long time. No, I really am thankful for that. I was fully in the wrong, and Man, you never know a man's shoes until you walk a mile in them, you know? And,
Sure enough. Sure enough.
You have had a lot of walking in your shoes. So
Yeah.
thank you for everything that you've done and continue to do. Check out ATAC. Click on the website, check it out, and you're going to probably be seeing a lot more of this place, which is from heaven. So, God bless.